Welcome to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales, where sales strategies meet real-world results. In today's episode, Kevin Lawson and Sean O'Shaughnessy reveal why consistent qualification is the secret to sales success, whether you're using simple frameworks like BANT or advanced methods like MEDDIC. You'll learn how disciplined sales processes sharpen forecasts, strengthen messaging, and accelerate revenue generation. Stay tuned, because this conversation could transform the way you approach every deal in your pipeline.
So when you're cooking a meal, let's think forward to Thanksgiving and Christmas. You've got a specific list of things you need to either buy or pull out of your pantry to make the meal complete. Selling is the same as creating a list of ingredients for the deal. You have to qualify them. In sales, we talk about qualifying deals and preparing food for the masses at your next family gathering. You're probably creating a list of what you're going to serve them. But for the purposes of today, Sean, let's dig into the idea of how do you qualify deals and what sales methodology is appropriate for you to use in your type of business. We're not going to hit them all. This is not an exhaustive list of all qualifying methodologies, but hopefully everyone out there that's listening is thinking about, hey, how can I add speed to my deal? How can I ensure my forecast is better? Or how can I ensure that this deal is probably going to close in this specific time period that I think it's going to close? The conversation today should really surface a lot of opportunities for you as sellers and leaders of salespeople to get more focused on deal data and closing probability, because the outcome here is make more money, have more fun, right? Because when you close things better, when you have more deal intelligence or customer intelligence or relationship intelligence gained through a qualifying methodology, you end up being better able to serve a customer. It's really hard to sit in the driver's seat and try and select one solution that's going to fit a bus full of people, right? Back to my cooking analogy. To feed everybody their exact, specific, most desired meal is really hard to do if you don't start asking a lot of questions. So in sales, we're talking about asking all those questions before we start driving. Don't get the cart before the horse. If you're a salesperson or a sales leader who is saying to yourself right now, Kevin, what in the world are you talking about? I'm talking about, hey, if you look at your pipeline right now and you're wondering why that deal keeps slipping into the next period, or you don't really know that you have a deal and all of a sudden it just comes about, or you've got a solution that somebody says, wow, that's really expensive. I was expecting something completely different. Those kinds of responses and situations are outcomes of deals that aren't fully qualified. Notice I didn't say terribly qualified. They're just not fully qualified. Because if they were fully qualified, you would better know what to offer, at what price point matches the problem you're solving's impact, and what timeline somebody's working against. So Sean, I've just gone for a full 3 minutes on talking about qualification methodologies. Fill in some gaps for me, because I know I've left a couple.
I don't know. I think you kind of let a full 3 minutes making me hungry. We put this episode out at 4:30 on Tuesdays. And if people are downloading as soon as it pops and listening to it, now they're going to hurry up and have to get home because they're starving to death because you've been talking about food and they haven't eaten since lunchtime. So anyway, but just like in your food analogy, and that's a great analogy, the recipe, the ingredients, the sizes of the different things, how many ounces and of this or that you have to do, just like that, the more salespeople you have in your organization, the more you have to standardize what it is that you're going to do. If I have 5 cooks making a dish, I want them to make the same dish, I have to give them the recipe for doing that. If I have 5 salespeople that are trying to qualify deals, I want them to qualify them the same way, or to ask the same types of questions over and over again. Now, if you're an individual salesperson and you're the only salesperson in your company, you're already turning off this episode going, I don't need to do that. However, you don't want to qualify a deal differently than you qualify the next deal or the next deal after that. You want consistency, you want some rules, and you also want some things that are going to help you remember what steps you have to do. And there's a variety of things that we can put together to make words. And we'll talk about those in a second. So when you're qualifying a deal, there's a few things you have to figure out. First of all, do you think they're going to buy from you? Like, that's the first thing to think about, right? So if you were in their shoes, would you buy your product from you to solve this problem? And then you got to think about, why do people buy something? And they do it to do one of two things: solve a problem or achieve a goal. And some people would say those are the same thing, just a different way of saying it, but they're not. I either have a problem, something that's keeping me up at night, I'm concerned about something, or I have a goal to achieve. So that should be part of your qualification metric. Do you know what that is for the customer? Does that even make sense? Do you know what that is? Another qualifying metric that you might want to think about is, what is my ROI for doing that? So if I have to invest my money to solve a problem, do I just want to break even? Do I want to still have a little bit of dollars left over because I bought something that'll solve a problem? Do I want to make a profit on that internally when I'm buying something? So what's my ROI? Do I need 3-to-1? Do I need 2-to-1? What do you need at that customer? So some type of reward of buying this and solving the problem. The customer has to go through that to figure out that it's worth me doing this effort. And that's why I am doing it. That also tells me how fast they're going to do it. And that's the other thing. It's like, where's the money going to come from to do this? 20 years ago, I was selling ERPs, mid-market ERP, to owners of companies. And we used to joke that the owner had a choice of buying a new boat or buying our software. That was their choice, right? So that's a reality too. Where's that money going to come from? And where else can that company invest to get a better return on their investment? Right here in Cincinnati, where both Kevin and I live, there's a company named Kroger. You may have heard it. They're one of the largest grocery stores in the United States. They put out a document every year, and they say, in order for us to buy something, we need an internal rate of return of X, whatever that is. And they publish that out, basically saying, if your product doesn't solve problems for us that give us that IRR of that much, then forget it. We're not going to buy it. You're never going to get it through the CFO if you're going to do it. How are they going to make money, and how are they going to prioritize different projects? Those are the things that you need to qualify for. And then you have to figure out who's making that decision. So that's did I have access to the right person that's actually going to do it? And there's a variety of acronyms that are going to help us remember that. One of the ones that's really popular is BANT. And I'm not a particular favorite of BANT. It's been around forever and a day. But BANT is a way of qualifying the deal, of figuring out if this is going to work. So Kevin, can you walk us through BANT? Because I think you talk about it more with your clients than I talk about it with mine.
So I talk about BANT a lot because it's simple. Doesn't mean it's easy. Things you do in the stages are challenging. And we'll get to some more challenging methodologies for enterprise level sales later, but we're going to start with simple because it's easy to remember: budget, authority, need, and timeline. That's a sterilized one word per letter of the acronym review of, am I talking to the right person, the authority? Am I talking about money? Am I matching a $1,000 problem with a $1,000 solution, or am I matching a $10,000 solution with a $100 problem? If you have a $10,000 solution for a $100 problem, you don't have a deal. You cannot create enough value at $10,000 for a $100 problem to sell your solution unless you have that problem 8,000 times a day, right? Then your internal rate of return, or your return on invested capital, or whatever metrics you're using as a CFO to value these deals, then you've got something to really talk about. But the B and the A, the budget and the authority, the N is the need. What is the need? What problem are we solving? And the timeline. When do we have to solve this project by? Using software for a second here, Sean, you and I have that in our background. When we were leading sales teams that were selling software, a lot of people would say, I've got to have this decision made by the end of the third quarter, end of the fourth quarter, end of whatever timeline, month, or whatever. And one of the fun questions you could just simply ask, because remember, BANT is a simple methodology, is what happens if we miss that third quarter decision date? Does the world stop? Is there some event at the end of the third quarter that makes this decision more prominent? Most of the time, the answer is no. It's an arbitrary date that somebody's boss or somebody's board said, hey, get this decided so we can get it implemented by a certain date. Typically, end of year closes are easier and cleaner, but they're not mandatory. But people tend to gauge go live with software on, if it's ERP software or accounting software, with ends of years and beginnings of years, just for a clean cut. Doesn't have to be like that. But so anyway, the need and the timeline are really important. But BANT, like Sean said, is really an old methodology. There's other similar ones. There's acronyms, and you can look all these up. We're going to include a note to a HubSpot blog article that outlines a dozen of these or so, but SPICED, SPIN, NEAT. There's all these 4 and 5 letter acronyms, but Sean, you and I spend a lot of time in software. So let's skip the rock across the lake here, and let's talk about a more complex one for those of our listeners that are doing a complex enterprise level sale or a software sale. Tee us up with MEDDIC and take us through MEDDPICC.
Thanks for the introduction or the overview on BANT, Kevin. I think that was great. Yeah, so I've been using MEDDIC and MEDDPICC for a long time, 30 years, I think, something like that. So I actually happened to work for the company that invented it, Parametric Technology Corporation, PTC. And if you want to get a really good overview of how to use it, more than what we're going to cover here, I'm going to encourage you to go read a book. And the book is called The Qualified Sales Leader. And it's a book by John McMahon, who was my boss 30 some years ago. John McMahon is the only known 5-time chief revenue officer that took a company public. So he was the VP of sales / chief revenue officer for 5 different companies that went public. He's now an advisor. He sits on a bunch of boards. One of the companies they sat on a board for was Mongo, for Mongo databases. And the book Qualified Sales Leader is actually taken from his experience in helping Mongo. So it's a great book. It's very well written. It's different from most books that you would read about in business because it basically goes cover to cover with new stuff and good stuff to read. Now, MEDDIC or MEDDPICC. The only difference between MEDDIC and MEDDPICC is the P in the middle. And the P in the middle stands for paperwork process. So paperwork process is, how am I going to make sure that this deal is going to close? And I know when it's going to close, and I know exactly what's going to happen in my really complicated customer as they get the paperwork done. And I'm not going to go through every letter of MEDDPICC, but it has a couple things that are really important. First of all, M stands for metrics. How are they going to justify this? What's the problem and what's it going to be? So what is the as is situation? Like, how are things working now? And then after they buy your product, what is the to be going to be? So that's a really important part. The second thing that is in MEDDIC or MEDDPICC that's really important is the E, economic buyer. It really stresses the idea that you have to have a meeting with the economic buyer in order to know what's really going on. And that's really important. And then the third thing that is incredibly important about MEDDPICC or MEDDIC is the C. And there may be a couple C's depending on which acronym, but the one C that's the most important, that is a champion. Every deal needs a champion. You need somebody internal to the organization to sell for you and sell with you throughout the process. And the sell for you is when you're not in the room, when you're not there, and somebody advocating for your product while you're not there. And that is a really important thing to have, because if you can get a champion to sell for you when you're not there, you are more likely to win the deal than if you don't have that. So read more about all of these different philosophies at that URL that Kevin talked about. It's in the show notes. We also talk about this a lot on the B2B Sales Lab. So the B2B Sales Lab is a group of sales leaders, salespeople that get together and we talk about and we help each other through sales problems. We give each other advice. It is an online community. We also occasionally have office hours where we get to talk to each other live, but it's an online community that allows you to learn. Go to b2b-sales-lab.com and join the lab. You got 90 days before you have to give any money, before you have to join. It's a great place. And if you don't like it after 90 days, then just don't join. Just don't pay for it. So it's awesome. Kevin, this has been good. Thank you very much. Talk to you next week.
What an insightful episode this has been. Kevin and Sean unpacked so many practical ideas, but what really stood out was their deep dive into MEDDIC and MEDDPICC. Hearing how metrics, the economic buyer, and the all-important champion work together to qualify complex deals was eye-opening. The way Sean described having an internal champion who sells for you when you're not in the room, well, that's a game changer for anyone leading enterprise-level sales. It's one thing to talk about value selling, but it's another to actually equip yourself with a framework that ensures consistent sales success. Of course, the real takeaway today was the actionable step to choose one qualification framework and stick with it across every deal. Consistency creates clarity, clarity drives better forecasting, and better forecasting leads to stronger revenue generation. Don't wait until the end of the quarter to try this. Make the decision today, before it slips into the background of daily business pressures. And remember, if you're looking for more support in sales management, messaging, or revenue growth, Kevin and Sean are always ready to help. Their contact information is waiting for you in the show notes. Plus, don't miss out on joining the B2B Sales Lab, an online community where salespeople and sales leaders come together to share strategies, solve challenges, and hit quota with confidence. The link to join the lab is right there in the show notes, and your first 90 days are free. Be sure to subscribe to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week at the usual time with more ideas to sharpen your sales strategies and elevate your business acumen. And until we talk again, happy selling!